Alright, Brook Shy. Brook Shy. Brook Shy. Double honors the apostles of GMS. Honestly, brothers will be pushing this truth in sincerity. Alright, this is gonna be, I think this is the third installment. This is one, two, yeah, the third, if you will, installment of our journey in terms of history. And as I said before in the previous videos, I'm not the best person at getting into the history, so I do my best to bring the information out as pure as I can, and hopefully there's no guile in there, but if there is, I certainly hope you brothers post the information on the comment board, and the whole body can be edified. Okay, so the third installment takes place pretty much in the time of the Medo-Persian Empire. Okay, as you can see from the list here before, you got the history of the time of the Assyrians. Okay, we got into that. We got the history of the time of the Babylonians, and each time, I've taken the video that me and the brother Rakai Kwam did, a couple of months, maybe even a whole year ago, and I've tried to extrapolate the information that I wasn't so good at, because the Most High gives a different dispensation of information to different brothers, but it doesn't mean to say you're not supposed to put the work in to at least be the best version of yourself that you could possibly be, which is what this video is. I'm not the best person at the history, but it's certainly me attempting to be the very best individual that I could be, and in so doing, going into the depths of the history as best as I can. But in no means at all am I trying to say I'm some type of historian or anything like that. This is me trying to just better myself, and in so doing, producing the video, which you don't really learn anything until you try to teach it. So every time I get to a point where I'm satisfied with that history, I try to do a video on it, and in so doing, I find areas where it's like, okay, I could have learned that a little bit better, and then I apply that to the next segment of history. Okay, and you digest the information a bit more. It's like learning to play a sport. I played sport for a certain amount of years, but it wasn't until I taught that sport when I really grasped the gravity of what's being said there. Same thing if you are out there and the Most High has put the Spirit upon you to be a prophet. Okay, He's put the Spirit upon you to be out there teaching. You don't really grasp the gravity of this truth right up until the point you try to teach that truth to somebody else. That's when you really get it. Okay, so without much further ado, I'm going to start this off in the book of Isaiah, the 13th chapter, and then I'm going to go to the book of First Ezra, and I'm going to read the first two chapters, and then I think I'll read the third chapter when we get into the story of. I'll read the third chapter, and I'll get into the story of Zerubbabel, and in so doing, I shall split this into two parts, into two sections, if you will. Not physically in terms of video, but more in terms of how I organize the information that I've got at me. And by the way, I'm not going to bring everything up on screen. It's just easier for me to read this off of the notes I've already made. In the last couple of months, because it does take, you're talking about reading whole books of the prophets and trying to understand everything that's going on. It does take a while to get these videos out. So, but like I said, I'll split this off into two segments, two major segments. I'll start off with some of the bit significant individuals in terms of the scriptures. So Zerubbabel, Ezra, Haggai, and maybe I'll go into Zechariah as well. But like I said, it's exhaustive, but it's not vastly exhaustive. And then I'll go into the history of the Persian monarchs. Okay, so I'll get into Darius. Okay, and as you can see from here, from the list of monarchs, here you can get this from Wikipedia. Cyrus the Great, Cambyses, and what else have I got? Who else was I gonna go into? Because you know, if I do each and every one of them, you know, some of them weren't biblically relevant, and some of them, you know, and some of them were biblically relevant. So I'm going to go into Cyrus. I got here notes on, you know, that's Cyrus the Great. I got Darius the Great here, and Artaxerxes. And each point I'll try, you know, bring it back to the scriptures and show you what the Most High did using their so-called power, but really it's the power that the Most High gave them, all right, as pertaining to the you know, to 12 tribes of Israel. So you had some individuals that you know, Cyrus allowed them to go back and he commissioned the, you know, funds and so on and so forth. And you had, you know, obviously the time of you know, Esther. Okay, which is funny. I should have a page on that. A bit disappointing actually. I haven't prepared that, but I could pull that up on screen. The time of Esther. I'll make a note to pull that up on screen when I get to it. Okay, because that's also relevant. Okay, so let me just. I mean, if I don't get to it, I don't get to it. But I should really have some notes on it. All right. So without much further ado, let me go into the. I'll start from the book of Isaiah, the 13th chapter, and and then that's going to get expounded upon within the book of Ezra here. Okay. So this is the prophecy that took place. I believe it was about 100 years before this actually took place, but this also pertains to the time that we're living in right now. Okay, so this is Isaiah 13th chapter on the first verse. It says, "The burden of Babylon, of which we're dealing with the Babylonians having taken us captives, and then when the Babylonians were taken down, as you can see here within the book of Daniel, the 5th chapter, when they were taken down, you pretty much had a situation where the next powers, the next rulers, they had power over us. Okay, so in other words, they inherited all the empire that the Babylonians had built up. Okay, so the burden of Babylon, which is son of Amos, the son of which is son of Isaiah, the son of Amos, did see, says, "Lift the upper banner upon the high mountain, exalt the voice and shake the hand. I've commanded my sanctified ones, my mighty ones, for mine anger, even them that rejoice in my highness." Okay, the noise of a multitude in the mountains is a great noise, all right, of a people, a tumultuous noise, with kingdoms and nations gathered together, right, together. Okay, the Lord of hosts mustereth up the hosts of battle. Okay, they come from a far country, right? Even the Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Okay, so that's what happened there. The Most High commissioned it to where the Medio Persians, which, if I go straight to the point, all right, the 17th chapter, "Behold, I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold they shall not regard it. Okay, and their bows shall dash the young men to pieces," that's the Babylonians. Okay, "and they shall have no pity upon the fruit of the womb rather more, their eyes shall not spare." Okay, so let's go to the book of Daniel, the 5th chapter, right quick, and get a little bit of more understanding of what was happening there. Okay, so Daniel 5:1, it says, "Belshazzar the king made a great feast, all right, for 1,000 of his lords, and they drank wine before the thousands. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring the golden and silver vessels which his father Nebuchadnezzar had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem." So when we was dealing with the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar, who had taken us down because we were doing all kind of wickedness. All right, as it's gonna say here in the book of Ezra's. Okay, as you're gonna see, he took the vessels and he basically was stunting. He got proud. He was showing off. Okay, and he says, "I'd taken out the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines might drink thereon." Okay, and it says, "And they brought the golden vessels that were taken out of the temple of the Lord, okay, which was at Jerusalem, and the king and his princes and his wives and his concubines drank in them. They drank wine. They praised the gods of gold, right, and of silver, of brass, iron, of wood, and stone. In the same hour came forth the fingers of a man's hand, and wrote against the candlestick upon the place of the wall of the wall of the king's palace. And the king saw the part of the hand that wrote." It says, "And the king's countenance changed, and his thoughts troubled him, so that the joints of his loins were loosed, and his knees smote against one another." Okay, so you imagine, you seen in cartoons and so on and so forth, and they got the legs shaking because they're fearful about what's about to happen in that. Well, that's the same thing that was happening here, because the Most High had them them spirits, the hand. I show pretty much show him in a roundabout way that he's about to lose his kingdom, man. Okay, it says, and the king cried aloud to bring the astrologers, right, and of the Chaldeans and the soothsayers. And it says, and the king spake and said to the wise men of Babylon, whosoever shall read this writing, right, and show me the interpretation thereof, shall be clothed in scarlet and have a gold chain about his neck, and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom, right. And then came the king's wise men, but could not read the writing, nor make known to the king the interpretation thereof. Then the king Belshazzar was greatly troubled, and his countenance was changed in him. Okay, so that's pretty much self-explanatory in that you're seeing, you know, the so-called wise men, of which you got a lot of so-called wise people out here in this day, witches and warlocks and so on and so forth, and they're trying to establish their so-called new world order. But the Most High is going to start showing so forth signs and disturbing apparitions before these elite banking families, and they're gonna be looking for an answer. But see, this is the only people that are gonna have the answer is the men of the Lord. Okay, so we're the modern day Daniel. Okay, and we're breaking down these scriptures and we're breaking down what's happening out there, and a lot of people ain't gonna understand what's going on out here. Okay, a lot of people are looking for the answers, man. Okay, a lot of people are looking for the answers. So bro's gonna be out there on point and on pose, ready to give these answers out there. Okay, so it says, it says, now the queen, by reason of the word of the king, the words of the king and his lords, came into the banquet, and the king spake, O king, live forever. Let not thy thoughts trouble thee, right? Nor the countenance be changed. It says, there is a man in the kingdom in whom is the spirit, right, of the holy gods. Okay, and it says, in the days of thy father, light and in the days of thy father, light and understanding and wisdom, like wisdom of the gods, was found in him, right? Whom Nebuchadnezzar the king, the king Nebuchadnezzar, thy father, the king, okay, right? I say, thy father made master of magicians and astrologers, Chaldeans and soothsayers, okay, which would have been a high position, because you gotta realize, like back in them times, man. Them so-called master magicians and astrologers and so on and so forth, they would have been like the modern day equivalent to them, scientists and so on and so forth. Being able to tell, the times and the seasons and whatever was going on out there. Okay, so it says, for as much as an excellent spirit and knowledge and understanding of interpreting dreams, furthermore, and showing forth hard sentences and dissolvings of doubts. Okay, were found in the same Daniel, whom the king made Belshazzar, right? Who the king named Belshazzar, right? Now let Daniel be called, and I will show the interpretation. Okay, now then was Daniel brought in before the king, and the king spake unto Daniel, art thou Daniel, which are of the children of the captivity of Judah, whom the king my father brought of Jewry? I have even heard of thee, that the spirit of the gods is in thee, and that light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in thee. So now the wise men, the astrologers, have been brought in before me, that they should read this writing and make known the interpretation thereof, but they could not show the interpretation of the thing. And now the wise men and astrologers I read that bit. It says, and I have heard of thee, and thou canst make interpretations and dissolve doubts. Now if thou canst read the writings and make known to me the interpretation thereof, thou shalt be clothed in scarlet and have a chain of gold about thy neck, and be the third ruler in the kingdom. And Daniel said before the king, let the gifts be to thyself, and give thy reward to another. Yet I will read the writing unto the king, and make known the interpretation. O thou king, the Most High gave Nebuchadnezzar thy father a kingdom, majesty and glory and honor. For the majesty that he gave him, all nations and languages trembled in fear before him. Whom he would slew, he slew. Whom he slew, and whom he would keep alive, and whom he set up, and whom he would put down. Okay, and it reads on. This is the 20th verse. It says, but when it is, but when his heart was lifted up and his mind hardened in pride, he was disposed from his kingly throne, and he took his glory from him. So the Most High basically bugged him out. Okay, and he was driven from the sons of men, and his heart was made like the beasts, and his dwelling was in the wild, was with wild asses. They fed him with grass like oxen, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, right? Till he knew that the Most High ruled in the kingdom of men, that he had appointed him over, that he appointed it over him whom he will. Okay, so pretty much, as you're reading there, his father Nebuchadnezzar got proud. Okay. Okay, so he got proud, and as you can read from the story, pretty much the Most High sent him out there, and he dwelt amongst beasts. Okay, he was eating the grass and so on and so forth. Just roughly to extrapolate what it's saying there. All right, so we shall carry on reading this, and it says, this is the 22nd verse, and it says, and thou his son, O Belshazzar, has not humbled thine heart, thou though thou knowest all of this. So he knew all of those, that what had happened to his father, and I believe it's his grandfather. I was just going off the top of my head, but don't quote me on that. Okay, but thou hast lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have they have brought the vessels of his house before thee, and thou and thy lords and thy wives and thy concubines have drank the wine therein in them, and thou hast praised the gods of silver, gold, and of brass and iron, wood, stone, which see not, nor hear not, nor know, and the Most High, in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, right, hast thou not glorified. It says, then was the part of the hand sent from him, and the writing, and this was the writing, and it says, and this is the writing that was written, many tekel Uphazim. And the interpretation, and this is the interpretation of the thing, many, the Most High has numbered thy kingdom and is finished. Tekel, thou art weighed in balances and thou art found wanting. Perez, the kingdom is divided, right, and is given into the Medes and the Persians. Then commanded Belshazzar, right, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck, and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be put the third in the ruler, should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And in that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain, and Darius the Median took the kingdom, being about 62 years old. Okay, so pretty much most of that was self-explanatory. You see what's going on there. Now we're gonna head over to the book of First Ezra, and we're gonna go back. This is gonna go backwards in terms of where we are at the minute in the book of Daniel, just to set the scene. Okay, it's gonna go backwards, and then once we get to the second chapter, you get the full magnitude of what's going on over there. Okay, so First Ezra is chapter 1, verse 1. It says, then Josiah held the feast of Passover in Jerusalem unto his lords, and offered Passover the 14th day of the first month, having set the priests according to their daily courses, being arrayed in long garments in the temple of the Lord. He spake unto the Levites, the holy ministers of Israel, that they should hallow themselves unto the Lord, to set the holy ark, right, of the Lord in the house that King Solomon the son of David had built. Okay, and said, ye shall no more bear the ark upon your shoulders. Now therefore serve the Lord your God, and minister unto his people Israel, and prepare after all your families and kindreds, right? According as David the king has of Israel prescribed, according to the magnificence of Solomon his son, and standing in the temples according to the several dignities of the families of you the Levites, who minister in the presence of your brethren the children of Israel. Offer the Passover in order, and make ready the sacrifices for your brethren, and keep the Passover according to the commandments of the Lord, which he had given unto which he had given unto Moses, which was given unto Moses, rather, and unto the people that was found there. Gave Josiah 30,000 lambs and kids and 3,000 cows. These things were given of the king's allowance according to as he had promised to the priests, to the people, to the priests, and to the Levites. And Hilkiah, Zacharias, Sailas, the governors of the temples, gave the priests for Passover 2,600 sheep and 300 calves. And Jeconias and Samanias and Nathaniel, his brothers, and Azabias and Ochiel, Joram, the captains over thousands, gave to the Levites for the Passover 5,000 sheep and 700 calves. And when these things were done, the priests and the Levites, having the unleavened bread, stood in a very comely order according to their kindreds, according to the several dignities of their fathers, before the people to offer to the Lord as it is written in the book of Moses. And they did thus they did therein the morning, and they roasted the Passover with fire as appertaineth. As for the sacrifices, they sod them in brass pots and pans with a good savor, and set before all the people afterwards, and they prepared for themselves and for the priests and their brethren, the sons of Aaron. As for the priests, offered the fat until the night, and the Levites prepared for themselves, and the priests their brethren, the sons of Aaron. The holy singers, right, the sons of Asaph, were in their order according to the appointment of King David, to wit, Asaph, Zacharias, and Jeduthun was of the king's retinue. Moreover, the potters were at the gate. It was not lawful for any to go from his ordinary service, for their brethren and their Levites prepared for them. And thus were the things that belongeth to the sacrifice of the Lord accomplished in that day, that they may hold the Passover. Okay, so it says, and offer sacrifices unto the altar of the Most High according to the commandments of the king Josiah. So the children of Israel were present, held the Passover at that time, and the feast of sweet bread 7 days. And such Passover was not in Israel since the time of Samuel. Yea, all the kings of Israel held not such a Passover as Josiah's. So when you read the history of Josiah, you can get into all of this, okay, and understand it. But I believe I touched on it on the previous video. And it says, and the priests and the Levites and the Jews held with all that were found in the dwelling of Jerusalem. And in the 18th year of the reign of Josiah was this Passover kept. And the works of Josiah were upright before the Lord, with full godliness. Okay, and as for the things that came to pass in his time, they were written in the former times concerning those that sinned and did wickedly against the Lord above all the people and the kingdom, and how they grieved him exceedingly, so that the word of the Lord rose up against Israel. Now after all these acts of Josiah, it came to pass that Pharaoh, I believe it's Pharaoh Necho, okay, the king of Egypt, came to raise war at Carchemish upon Euphrates, and Josiah went against him. And it says, but the king of Egypt said unto him, saying, what have I to do with thee? Because what Pharaoh wanted to do was just pass through the land and go deal with his business. But the Most High really put that spirit on Josiah, which was a spirit which ultimately led him to his own demise. Okay, the Most High had it to where, you know, he hardened his heart. He got proud. He didn't want them Hamites, Hamites to go through there. So so he went up to war against him. But you see in it here where the king of Egypt was basically saying, look, I ain't got no business with you. I'm going about my own business. But he didn't want to hear any of that. He says, I'm not sent out to you from the Lord against thee, right? For my war is upon you, Euphrates. Okay. It says, now the Lord is with me. Yea, the Lord is with me, hasting me forward. Depart from me, and be not against thee. Be not against the Lord. It says, howbeit Josiah turned not back in his chariot, but undertook to fight with him, not regarding the words of the prophet Jeremiah, that Jeremiah had spoken about the word of the Lord. So even the prophet Jeremiah had spoken it to him. Like I said, I touched on this in the previous video, but even the prophet Jeremiah had gone and told him not to go against Pharaoh Necho, if I'm not mistaken, in this war. All right, but he went and did so. Okay, continuing. In the 29th verse, but he joined battle with them at Megiddo, hence the battles of Megiddo. You can check that out. Okay, and the princes came against the king Josiah, and they said, then said the king unto his servants, carry me away right out of this battle, for I am weak, because I believe he got he got stabbed in his side or something like that. Okay, and immediately his servants took him away from the battle, and they got him up in his second chariot, and being brought back to Jerusalem, died and was buried in his sepulchre. Okay, in his father's sepulchre. And in all that, in all Jewry they mourned for Josiah, and yea, Jeremiah the prophet lamented for Josiah, and the chief men with the women made lamentations for him unto this day. Right, this was given out for an ordinance to be done continually in all the nation of Israel. Okay, now we'll get into the prevalent bits as pertaining to this video. Right, now these writings are written in the book of the stories of the kings, and every one of the acts of Josiah did, and his glory and his understanding in the law, and the things that he had done before, and the things now recited are reported in the book of the kings of Israel and Judah. Okay, it says, and the people took Jehoiachaz, right, the son of Josiah, and made him king instead of Josiah, his king, when he was 23 score, and he reigned in Judea, right, and in Jerusalem 3 months. And the king of Egypt disposed him in his reigning, and he set a tax upon the land of 100 talents of silver and a talent of gold. Okay, and the king of Egypt, okay, also made Jehoiachin or Sim here. Right, but when you go into the book of Chronicles and the book of Kings, it's I believe it's Jehoiachin. Either way, same individual. His brother, king of Judea. Okay, this is one of the principal 3 sons of Josiah. I think it's 3 or 4 sons he had. King in Judea and Jerusalem. Okay, and he says, and he bound Jehoiachin and the nobles, but Azariah says his brother, he apprehended and brought him out of Egypt. 25 years old was Jehoiachin when he was made king in the land of Judah and Jerusalem, and he did evil before the Most High. Okay, all right. So it says here. So when he was basically when Egypt was pretty much a strong power. I went into this in the previous video, but just to set this reset the scene again. Egypt was pretty much a strong power at the time. It has a certain amount of influence. Okay, to the end that when Josiah had passed away, the Pharaoh disposed the successor, which was one of the sons of Josiah, and he set up a ruler that was going a subordinate, a vassal, okay, a vassal king in his stead. Okay, but that vassal king ended up being all kind of wicked, and then you had it to where Nebuchadnezzar or Nebuchadnezzar here in Greek variant okay, had come up against Jerusalem and carried them away into captivity, as we have read in the well, pretty much we haven't read this section of it, but now it's going to build up the story now. Okay, so as Nebuchadnezzar also took all the vessels, so wherefore against him Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Egypt, the king of Babylon rather more, came up and bound him with chains and of brass and carried him away into Babylon. Okay, and Nebuchadnezzar also took off the holy vessels of the Lord and carried them away and set them in his own temple. But those things are recorded of him, and all his uncleanness and ineptity are written in the chronicles of the kings. And Joachim his son reigned in his stead, and he was made king, being 18 years old, and he reigned about 3 months and 10 days in Jerusalem, and he did that which was evil before the Lord. So after a year, Nebuchadnezzar sent and caused him to be brought into Babylon with the holy vessels of the Lord, and made Zedekiah king of Judea and Jerusalem, when he was 21 years old. And he reigned 11 years, and he did that which was evil in the Lord, and cared not for the words that were spoken unto him by the prophet Jeremiah. Like when you go into the book of Jeremiah, a lot of this stuff is recorded, and you can see, Jeremiah pretty much had a hard time with his jakes, man. Okay, he had a hard time because it was all kind of wicked. Okay, all right. So, the 48th verse, and it says, after that the king Nebuchadnezzar had made him to swear by the name of the Lord, forswore him and rebelled and hardened his neck and his heart and transgressed all the laws of the Lord of Israel. And it says, and the governors also all of the people and the priests did many things against the law and passed all the pollutions of the land of the nation and defiled the temple of the Lord, which was sanctified in Jerusalem. Nevertheless, the Lord, the Most High of their fathers, sent by his messenger to call them back, because he spared them and his tabernacle also. But they had his messengers in derision, and look, when the Lord spake unto them, they made a sport of the prophets, so far that he being wroth with his people for their great ungodliness, commanded the kings of the Chaldeans to come up against them. Okay, so the Babylonians came, right, who slew their young men with the sword. Yea, even within the compass of the holy temple spared neither young men or maid or old man or nor children, nor child or more, right, among them, for he delivered all into their hands. Okay, and they took all the holy vessels of the Lord, and brought both great and small, and the vessels of the ark of the Most High, and the king's treasures, and carried them away into Babylon. As for the house of the Lord, they burnt it and break down the walls of Jerusalem and set the fire upon it. See, this point is important, because when we're dealing with the Medo-Persian Empire, we're dealing with the rebuilding of the temple. Okay, so when you fast forward into modern day times, when we're dealing with the pretty much the destruction of the modern day Babylon, okay, when we're dealing with that, we're also dealing with the rebuilding of the spiritual temple, which is going to physically manifest itself, obviously. Okay, we're dealing with the spiritual rebuilding of the temple of the Most High. Okay, so all of these things intertwine with a thing called reincarnation, in that the Most High has these reoccurring scenes within history of things being, brought down, destroyed, and being rebuilt up. Okay, all right. So the 55th chapter, and says, as for the house of the Lord, they burnt it and break down the walls of Jerusalem and set fire upon her towers. And as for her glorious things, they never ceased till they had consumed and brought them all to naught. And for the people that were slain, or that were not slain with the sword, were carried away unto Babylon, whom became servants and children, became servants to him and his children, till the Persians reigned, to fulfill the word of what was spoken about the prophet Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. Okay, the whole time of her desolation, she shall rest until the full time of 70 years. So you should be getting everything. There's not too much breaking down needs to be done there. What I would recommend, especially in this, because there's a lot of history contained there. We're spanning 70 years here in one chapter, so over 70 years in one chapter, because the time of Josiah, that predates that. But like I said, I did that in the previous video. I went into that. So what you want to do here is you want to take the relevant information. You just you search out Josiah's, search out his sons. Okay, the son that was taken into Egypt, the son that was taken to Babylon. Okay, the burning of the temple. These are all titles. These are all things that you could search out in Google. Okay, and you get the information on them. Some of it is going to be nonsense. You got to dismiss it. Some of it is going to be relevant. The battle of Megiddo. That goes into just Josiah's. Okay, Josiah. Okay, I believe you also have Josiah's reforms. Let's get that. Okay, like I said, I went into this in the previous video, but pretty much what you had was a situation, all right, where Josiah's was getting into he had found, I believe, if I remember the story off the top of my head correctly, he had found the scrolls of the scriptures in the temple, and they was doing all kind of abomination, right? But he basically did away with that. So the Most High was dealing heavy with him. Okay, the Most High was dealing heavy with him. I just quickly touch on that just to make sure I want a summary. Okay, so it says stages of reforms. It is not known whether the purgative activities in Judah are contemporaneous with those with the northern territories. The presentation of the events in 2 Kings, the 23rd chapter, on the 4th verse, leaves the impression that the reforms had been performed step by step. The first move of Josiah was the abolition and of objectable of I can't even pronounce that, objectionable cults from Jerusalem and the cities of Judah. Okay, and there came destruction of the altar of Bethel, and afterwards the destruction of the high places of the Samarians provinces, according to 2 Chronicles 34:6, and says, and the reforms extended as far as Naphtali and Galilee, and the gradual political deterioration of the Assyrian Empire as support to the supposition of a gradual takeover of the northern territory by Josiah. Okay, and and they go into that. So basically, he was taking down the altars that Jerusalem, Jakes had set up, the abominable altars. Okay, so that Passover was a very big Passover, because it was pretty much marking the time when they were getting back into the Lord. But see, after his death, okay, after he had died, you had the same thing happening again, right? To the end, the Most High had to send the Babylonians, and obviously the Babylonians had us in captivity for a certain amount of time, 70 years to be exact. Okay, and then the Most High set upon them, the Medio Persians. Okay, so we touched on Darius the Mede over here. Okay, now I'm gonna go into a piece of just touching on these some background work on Darius the Mede, and then I'll go into Cyrus here, which is spoken about in the 2nd chapter. Okay, I'll try to keep this as orderly as physically possible. Obviously, every 40 minutes, pause it, because I know you Israelites, your attention span is that of a goldfish. So every 40 minutes, pause it and come back to it another time. If the spirit jumps on you, to come back on it. Okay, so this is an excerpt I've got, and I've got this in the notes I had made. So this is Darius the Mede, okay, a Babylonian underneath of Babylonia underneath Cyrus, right, as mentioned in the 6th chapter of Daniel. So let's jump to Daniel, the 6th chapter, right quick, just to verify that information. So 6th chapter. Okay, and I want to go straight to the point on this one. I don't want to read all of it. Give me a verse. What if I search Cyrus and gives it to me? Right, so Daniel 6:28 says, so Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, in the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Okay, so um, it's pretty much what he's saying here in the excerpt I've got here. So it says Darius the Mede of Babylonia under Cyrus the Great, right, in the 6th chapter of Daniel. Okay, immediately following the death of Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, Darius the Mede is said to have received the kingdom. Daniel 5:31. We read that, having been made king over the realm of Chaldeans by Cyrus the Great. Okay, and I believe that's in 6:28. Yeah, 6:28. Okay, so and he is best remembered for his unalterable decree, in which his officers tricked him by signing, um, which resulted in Daniel being cast into the lions den. That's 6 and 7. Okay, and in contrast to Nebuchadnezzar, this ruler was helpless to reverse his own decree, vividly illustrating the inferiority of the silver kingdom. Okay, because when you go into the dream that Daniel had, okay, he had the dream, but pretty much it wasn't, was it Daniel? It was one of the kings of Babylon had a dream. I forget the information step by step, but pretty much the dream was of a head of gold, and I believe you had silver arms, and let's go to it. Let's go to it. Might as well go to it. Okay, so we're looking for the Nebu statue. There we go. Okay, so the Babylonian was gold. Okay, and they had ultimate power. Okay, silver. This section here, which was the Media Persian, but they had an inferior power to that of the Babylonians. And sorry, I don't know if power is the correct term, but the splendor of that kingdom was reduced. Okay, and what the person is saying here that I've written this article here is basically saying the vividly illustrating the inferiority of the silver kingdom of the Media Persians to the golden kingdom of the Babylonians in the matter of royal sovereignty. Compare Daniel 3:29, right? Esther 1:19, and the testimony of Diodorus, right? Siculus, okay? That Daniel the third, right, wanted to free a man he had condemned, but realizing that it was impossible to undo what was done by the royal authorities. Okay, so hopefully that makes some kind of sense. Pretty much they couldn't do, the Babylonians could do whatever they want. They could they could decree someone go in prison, they could free him, or whatever. But the Media Persians were, they didn't have the same thing. Okay, so Darius the Mede is not to be confused with the latter monarch Darius High Steps in 521 to 486, for he was a Median of the Median extraction, right? And it says right, and his father's name was Ahasuerus, which is a title equivalent to Xerxes, I believe. And it says the name of Darius, the son of Darius the first, right? See Esther 1:1. Okay, it says Darius the Mede was born in 601 or 600 BC. For at the fall of Babylon 539, he was about 62 years old. They quote me here. Okay, it says the major assumption of the negative higher criticism. So I mean, all of that was, that's pretty much all we need to take from that. Okay, so you get a little background history on that. So that's pretty much the story of Darius. Not too many significance. I mean, you can go into the book of Daniel and read the story about Lion's Den. for all of that. So I'm gonna move on with with the um with the history now. I'm gonna leave the I'm gonna come back to that to this scripture here in a second, but I wanted to touch on the generic history of the Medo-Persians before I do that, so we get a generic background of what's going on here. So this is going to be a bit of a lengthy read, and I've got it here within my paperwork. So it says the Medes and the Persians is the title. It says the history and rise of the Medo-Persians forms an important background for over 200 years of biblical history. Okay, so when you got guys out there talking about like Tommy Sotomayor saying, "Oh, the Bible is this, that, and it's not real," and all of that, well, you gotta be an asshole, because when all of these different individuals, these different historians are studying at different points in history, okay, they gotta go to the scriptures, okay. When they're studying about, they want to make a movie about the Medo-Persians or whatever, they gotta go to the scriptures, man. Okay, so I'm going to read that again. It says, history of the rise and fall of the Medo-Persian Empire forms an important background for over 200 years of biblical history. Located in the area of the South Caspian Sea, east of Zagros Mountain, is the original domain, stretched 600 miles north and south and 250 miles east to west. The nation first came into prominence in the 9th century BC and is mentioned in the inscription by Shalmaneser III, the Assyrian, right, 836 BC. Though under the domination of Assyria until the 7th century BC, their rise in power was contemporary with the decline of the Assyrian Empire in 614 BC. Okay, the Medes capture Ashur, the capital city of Assyria. Later in 612 BC, in alliance with the Chaldeans, they captured Nineveh, resulting in the downfall of the Assyrian Empire. In the years which followed, they were an important ally of Babylonia and formed various alliances and intermarriages. Towards the end of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar, the Persians began to become more powerful force under Cyrus II, which is also called Cyrus the Great, was captured in it says, and under Cyrus the second, Media was captured in the 549 BC and was combined with Empire of the Persians to form the Medo-Persian Empire. The combined strength of the Persians and the Medes led to the conquest of Babylon in 539 BC, resulting in the extension of their empire over much of the Middle East until the conquest of Alexandria 331 BC. Alright, and that's going to be the next point in the history, which I'll touch on much later on. Probably, if this kingdom is still up, be towards spring. Like I said, these things, it takes some time to get your head around, especially if you got a slow mind like I got. It says first mentioned of the Medes in the scriptures is found a prophetic utterance when the declaration 175 years before is fulfilled. Behold, I'll stir up the Medes against it, which is why we read the book of Isaiah, the 13th chapter. Against them, we shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it. In succeeding verses, the downfall of Babylon is predicted, and Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, the beauty of the Chaldeans, the excellency, shall be overthrown as Sodom and Gomorrah. And this is when it's talking about as Sodom and Gomorrah, that's talking about the modern day Babylon. Okay, it says Jeremiah includes the Medes as one of the many nations in which will be the punishment of the Most High. It's Jeremiah 25 and 25. Jeremiah also states that the Medes, which will be used of the Most High to destroy Babylon, make brighter arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the Medes for his device against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord. Okay, the vengeance of his temple. Jeremiah 51 and 11, Jeremiah 51 and 28. Thus, long before Babylon fell, it was predicted the Medes would be the Most High's avenging instrument. Okay, that's why a lot of times these different kings, they'll go into the scriptures and see that they're pretty much it's gonna be their time to rule. Okay, so following on, it says prophecy of Daniel. It was given to Daniel the prophet, however, to give the Medes and the Persians their proper place in the panorama of the future history. The Medes and the Persians were anticipated in their expression in Daniel 2 and 39. After thee shall arise another kingdom inferior to thee. This refers to the chest and of silver in the image of Daniel. So when we went to the Nebu statue here, we're talking about the inferiority of the Medo-Persians in comparatively to the Babylonian Empire. Okay, more detail. It says, okay. It says more detail is given in the vision of Daniel recorded in Daniel 7 and 5, where Daniel describes the second beast, and and behold, another beast like unto a bear, of which, just to fast forward, you got the Russians calling themselves the Russian bear now, because they know what? They know that Babylon, by way of searching out the scriptures, they know that there was a modern day Babylon, and therefore Babylon needing to be destroyed, just like how the ancient Babylon was destroyed, there would have to be a modern day Medo-Persian Empire, which is them. Okay, so they understand that. So they refer to themselves as the Russian bear, going back onto what? Onto the Daniel the 7th chapter. I'm not saying that Daniel the 7th chapter is talking about them, but when you was really talking about the Medo-Persians. But when you fast forward it onto modern day times, just like how the scripture says there's nothing new underneath the sun, then you understand that it's going to be talking about someone now that's going to destroy the modern day Babylon. Okay, it says it is raised up on itself on the one side, and it has 3 ribs in its mouth, in between the teeth, and they said, thus arise, devour much flesh. Okay, and when we can watch the movie 300, we see the Medo-Persians were getting in terms of taking down people, man. They were devouring much flesh. Okay, and the kingdom of the Medo-Persian Empire is described as a bear, which has raised itself on the one side, referring to Persia's being greater than the Media. It says says, and has 3 ribs in its mouth. Okay, and it says the next most. Right, so it says the exhortation to arise and devour much flesh is an encouragement to the new empire to expand as it did in its conquests to the north and to the west. A further prophetic picture of the empire of the Medo-Persian is given in Daniel 8, where a ram with 2 horns, which is destroyed by a goat, is obvious reference to the kingdom of the Medo-Persians. Okay, the 2 horns are the Medes and the Persians, and Daniel's description of it in Daniel the 8th chapter on the 3rd and 4th verse is characteristics of the 2 centuries of rule that the Medo-Persians pick out the bones. These breakdowns of Daniel the 8th chapter available online. Okay, it says, then I lifted up mine hands and saw, and behold, they stood before the river, a ram with two horns, and the 2 horns were high, but one was higher than the other, and the higher came up last. Okay, talking about how pretty much symbolic of how the Medo-Persian Empire has ruined. They're gonna explain this in this art contest. And I saw the ram pushing eastward, westward, northward, and southward, so that no beast might stand before him. Neither was there any that could deliver out of his hand, but they did according to his own will and became great. The lower horn apparently refers to the kingdom of the Medes, and higher that came latter to it is the kingdom of Persia, which dominated Media. It says the 4th verse describes the conquest westward, northward, southward, and which characterizes the history of the empire, as there was no comparable progress eastward. Okay, a considerable progress eastward. All of this prediction is precisely fulfilled in the latter history. Only by divine revelation could Daniel know in advance that the conquest of the Medo-Persians would be in to the north, south, and west, but not eastward, in contrast to the Macedonian conquests, which were mainly to the east, right, as indicated in the subsequent verses in the activities of the goal, okay, which was dealing with the Macedonians and the Greco-Roman Empire, okay. Now we get into some more meaty parts. It says Israel's restoration under the Medes and the Persians, okay, which is where this is going to become relevant, and the various different books that we can get into in getting into this. Like I said, pause it at any time, come back to it. There's a lot of history here to digest, but certainly it's all important stuff, man. You're gonna know this stuff. I'm not saying that I know it, but I certainly, trying to give it a go. It says, while the prophetic records concerning the Medo-Persians is in clear fulfillment, and it is confirmed by history, its principal importance is historical rather than prophetic. In contrast to the Babylonian Empire, which is significant for the destruction of Jerusalem, the city of the Most High, beginning the Gentile dominion over Israel, which will not culminate until Yahushua comes in his second advent. The rise of the Medes and the Persians is important as forming the background of Israel's partial restoration. Okay, so it says here, 3 of the historical books, Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, and 3 of the minor prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, have their context in the reign of the Medo-Persian Empire during their period. The captives of Judah were permitted to go back to Jerusalem and restore the ancient cities, the ancient city and its temple. Right, the key of the Babylonian Empire is the Gentile dominion over Jerusalem, and the key of that's talking about the heathens, by the way. This is the key to the empire of the Medes and the Persians is the restoration of Jerusalem. So 3 historical books were named there. Okay, you got Ezra, which is that's I believe that's quite long, so I'm not going to touch on Ezra. You can read that in your own self. Some of this information is mirrored across a multitude of scriptures. So if I go to Ezra, okay, in my soul right here, okay, it pretty much Ezra, the first chapter, now in the first year of Cyrus the king, etc., etc., which is what we're going to read here, pretty much here in First Ezra chapter 2, okay, and it goes into the history and so on and so forth, okay, in the time of Ezra. But what I will do, barring, what I will do, instead of reading all of those different scriptures, and chapter for chapter, verse for verse, what I will do for each one of these is I'm going to pull up the pretty much the summary of what was happening there. So if I put the prophet Ezra, okay, or rather more the book of Ezra, we should be able to get some information of what was going on at the time. So what I'll do is I think I'll use this. I forget the one I read, but I'll use this one. This one seems pretty much decent. Okay, because I printed out these different. I don't want to go into. I'll go to overview or something like that. Okay, or something like this. Okay, so I read this one. This one looks quite nice. But like I said, you can read the whole thing for yourself. I did that in the background. So some of these stuff I'll be able to highlight on. But you can certainly read this in the background on yourself. So this is dealing with the prophet Ezra, and we do Nehemiah, then Esther, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, maybe, and then we get back into the into the history summary that I've got in front of me here. So, but this is all happening in the time of the Media Persians. Okay, so the Book of Ezra does not specifically name its author. In tradition, rather than the Book of Ezra, the tradition is that the Prophet Ezra wrote the Book of Ezra, and it is interesting to note that Ezra appears on the scene in chapter 7. The author of the Book of Ezra switches from writing in third person to first person. This would also lend credibility to Ezra being the author. Okay, date, this is occurring at 460 to 440 BC. Purpose of writing: the Book of Ezra is devoted to the events occurring in the land of Israel at the time of the return from Babylon, the Babylonian captivity in subsequent years, covering a period of approximately 1 century, okay, beginning in 583 BC. The emphasis in Ezra is on rebuilding of the temple. Okay, the book contains extensive genealogical records, principally for the purpose of establishing the claims to the priesthoods on the part of the descendants of Aaron. Okay, key verses. Right, so the first key verse they list there is Ezra 3 and 11. I don't know what sword they're using there, so just to be careful, we'll go to this one, 3 and 11, right? So it says there, Ezra 3 and 11, it says, and they sang together by the course in praising and giving thanks unto the Most High, because he is good, for his mercy endureth forever towards Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout. And when they praised the Most High, because the foundation of the house was laid. Okay, so let's go back onto this summary. Okay, it says so next. So let's see how close that was. See if it was using the King James version. So it looks like they're using the King James version now. Okay, so I can read this Ezra 7 and 6. Ezra 7 and 6. This Ezra came out of Babylon. He was a teacher, well versed in the law of Moses, which the Lord, God of Israel, had given. He says the king had granted him everything he had asked, for the hand of the Lord, his God, was upon him. Okay, so a brief summary says the book may be divided as follows: chapter 1 to 6, the return under Zerubbabel, which we're going to get into in this point here, okay, because that's a significant individual, and in what's happening, it was happening at the time. Okay, the return under Zerubbabel, rebuilding and building of the second temple. Chapter, let's read that again. The book may be divided as follows: chapter 1 to 6, the first return under Zerubbabel and the building of the second temple. It says chapter 7 and 10, the ministry of Ezra. And since well over half a century had collapsed between 6 and 7, the characters of the first part of the book had died by the time Ezra began his ministry in Jerusalem. Ezra is the one person who is prominent in the book of Ezra and Nehemiah, right? Both books end with prayers of confession, Ezra 9 and Nehemiah 9. Subsequent separation of the people from the sinful practices into which they had fallen. Some concepts of the nature of encouraging messages of Haggai and Zechariah, who are introduced in narratives in this narrative, Ezra 5 and 1, may be seen in prophetic books that bear their name. Okay, so it says the book of Ezra covers the return from the captivity to rebuild the temple up to the decree of Artaxerxes, right? Temple. Let me read it again. The book of, because I'm trying to remember, how this all ties in together at the top of my head. The book of Ezra covers the return, right, from the captivity to rebuild the temple upon the decree of Artaxerxes. The event covered at the beginning of the book of Nehemiah. Okay, Haggai was the main prophet in the day of Ezra, and Zechariah was the prophet in the day of Nehemiah. All right, so it says, so because they had mentioned this, I'm just gonna jump ahead and come back. We're gonna go to go to the book of Nehemiah. Like I said, I've read vast majority of these in the background, over the last couple of months. Okay, but But to read every verse for verse, you know, you put, you know, Jake's gonna switch off, man. Okay. Um. Right. So the book of Nehemiah opens in the in Persian city of Susa in 444 BC, or 444 BC. Later that year, Nehemiah traveled to Israel, leading the third of the three returns by the Jewish people following 70 years of exile in Babylon. Okay, it says the previous chapter in Ezra describes the earlier two returns. Okay, uh, uh, most of the books, because you had three prominent returns. Okay, it says most of the book centers on the events in Jerusalem. The narrative concludes around 430 BC, and the scholars believe that the book was written shortly thereafter. Nehemiah is the last historical book of the Old Testament, although the book of Esther appears after Nehemiah in canon. The events in Esther occurred in the time where the periods are between Ezra the 6th chapter and Ezra the 7th chapter. So when you're reading the book of Esther, you know, that muddled me up a little bit. And and honestly, it put me off for a little while until I had figured out what was, you know, what was where things were taking place. Because the scriptures, you know, you might read one scripture and it might be like 60 years, 70 years, maybe even 100 years worth of history in that one chapter. Okay, so it could be quite difficult. But once I had got my head around that statement here, when you're reading the book of Esther, then you know where everything pretty much is falling in line. Okay, it says, I'll jump on down to the next person. It says, why is Nehemiah so important? It says, Nehemiah was a layman, not a priest like Ezra, not a prophet like Malachi. He served the Persian king in a circular position rather more, before leading a group of Jews to Jerusalem in order to rebuild the city walls. It says Nehemiah's enterprise in the king's court equipped him adequately for political and physical reconstruction necessary for the remnant to survive. Under Nehemiah's leadership, the Jews withstood opposition and came together to accomplish their goal. It says Nehemiah led by example. Okay, giving up a respected position in the palace for hard labor in politically insignificant districts. Okay, so how many guys, like, you're gonna see is, let's be honest right now. Okay, let's take a stand back. Okay, we'll take an individual like Nathaniel, okay, of the IUIC, Nathaniel 7, okay, whatever you want to call him. Okay, is he gonna give up? See, this was an individual here, right? That being Nehemiah, who had a higher position than Nate could ever have, okay, in this kingdom. But here it is, you got the men of the Lord. They will give that up for the work of the Lord. Nate's not even willing to give up, you know, that position that he's got right now, man. Okay, so you know, I thought I'd throw that in there just something to think about, you know. Okay, so let's carry on. Yeah, but see, the elders would do that. Hell, the elders have done that. Okay, you know, all the men of the Lord that you see out there, you know, prophets could have been, you know, famous and wealthy and rich, you know, because we all got talents. All Jake's got talents. It's just a matter of harnessing that. Okay, our dedication to this truth goes to show you that if we was in this world, man, we talented, man. Okay, so carrying on, he partnered with so under Nehemiah's leadership, the Jews withstood opposition and came together to accomplish their goal. It says Nehemiah led by example, giving up a respected position in the palace for hard labor in a politically insignificant district. He partnered with Ezra, who appears in this book to solidify the political and spiritual foundations of the people. Nehemiah's humility before the Most High, see his moving into intercessory prayers in chapters 1 and 9, provided an example for the people. He did not claim glory for himself, but always gave the credit to the Most High. Right? And when you read it, it's pretty much of that same spirit. Okay, Nehemiah recorded the reconstruction of the wall of Jerusalem. right, Judah's capital city. Together, he and Ezra, who led the spiritual revival of the people, directed the political and religious restoration of the Jews in their homeland after the Babylonian captivity. Nehemiah's life provides a fine study of leadership. So you get the gist there. So this marks the third. Hopefully I'm gonna get back to this, right, and build a picture of the first, the second, and the third return. Okay, so we was here in this article here. Okay, so it goes into foreshadowing and all that. So I can finish off there. It says the book of Ezra covers the return of the captivity from the captivity to rebuild the temple up to the decree of Artaxerxes. The events covered at the beginning of the book of Nehemiah. Okay, Haggai was the main prophet, etc., etc. So we pretty much read that. So we've touched on Ezra's, Nehemiah. Okay, now I want to do Okay, I'm gonna do a quick search. I'll see if it brings it up for me. Okay. See, free returns Babylon. Let's just do that because. See if it's gonna give it to me the way I want to see it. Okay, I want to see that. I think it does give me that. Right, so it says here, return from Babylon. The people of Judah were wholly distressed, right? Etc., etc., etc. So they would return, and the temple would be built, and the Messiah would come. Okay, so it lists me 3 stages here. Hopefully that's what I wanted to see, because it says here Ezra and Nehemiah. Okay, so it says here, let's read that, the decree of Cyrus. So it says by 538 BC, Babylon had passed into history, and Media Persians took over. Right, Cyrus the Persian issued a decree allowing the Jews to return, the Jews to go back to their homeland with the blessing of the Persian Empire. The Jews were hardly moved. Babylon was their home, so only a portion returned, and this is in Nehemiah, the 7th chapter. All right, only 74 Levites who were supposed to be known for dedication to the things of the Most High. So let's go to that right quick. Nehemiah, the 7th chapter, the 1st verse. Now it came to pass. See, that's not really it. That's not it. Okay, bear with me a little bit. Okay, all right, okay. We'll just carry on with this. Okay, so it says only a portion returned. Okay, 74 of the Levites who were supposed to be for the dedication. Okay, the first move back to Palestine was led by Zerubbabel of the house of David. He was the only one of the royal blood to pay any attention to the decree of Cyrus. And then Second Ezra, the 2nd chapter. Ezra's the 2nd chapter. When he returned, he found just rubble, no temple, torn down walls, and a mixed breed of corrupt Jews, the Samaritans, apparently living there. It says in 536 BC, he laid the foundation of the new temple, right? Built an altar and worshipped the Lord. It says the prophet Haggai and Zacharias helped urge the Jews on. It says then they finished the work in 516 BC, exactly 70 years. It says Ezra and Nehemiah. It says 58 years later, more Jews returned, okay, under the leadership of Ezra. 12 years later, Nehemiah received permission to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem and to govern Judea. He arrived in 444 BC. Despite much opposition, Nehemiah completed this seemingly hopeless task in 52 days. Then a revival followed. Ezra and Nehemiah canonized the books of the Old Testament. They read aloud to the people and gave interpretation. It says about 40 years later, the prophet Malachi condemned the people for slipping back into their sinful ways. Okay, so that's pretty much the histories of the returns. Okay, but there's one missing in there, which is listed in the book of Esther. Okay, so I go to the book of Esther and call that the last one before I carry on with this document. Okay, so if I go here and I put in the book of Esther, it's a summary, and when they're talking about the opposition that they faced, you pretty much had individuals going up to the kings of Media Persia, of the Media Persian Empire. Okay, the heathens, they were going up and saying, look, don't you remember what? Go read your history, and you're gonna find within your history that this was a troublesome nation. Okay, this was a troublesome nation, and how that they had wrought much grief against your fathers, man. Okay, so they opposed them to rebuilding, but ultimately they carried on building. So I forget where that's listed. Okay, but I think I'm gonna get to it a little bit later on. All right, so let's carry on with this. So it says here, the book of Esther is narrative history, right? The author is anonymous. Some believe Mordecai, Esther's cousin and guardian, wrote it, and it is approximately 470 BC. Just Esther became queen in 479 BCE. The key personalities are Esther, Mordecai, and King Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, and Haman the Edomite. Okay, its purpose is to demonstrate the Most High's love and sovereignty in all circumstances. It's a post-exile story about the Jews who stayed behind after most returned to Jerusalem after captivity. Okay, it says Babylon was conquered by Persia, and Esther's miraculously became the queen of the land and saves her people. It says chapter 1 and 2, Esther becomes the queen of to Ahasuerus of Persia. She was she was personally chosen by the king. The king loved Esther more above all the women, and she found favor and kindness within him. That's Esther 2 and 17. Okay, this is probably because of her beauty and intelligence. It says 3 and 4, Mordecai, Esther's guardian, refused to bow down and pay homage to Haman the Edomite, an official of the king, and Haman becomes infuriated and plots to destroy all the Jews in the kingdom because of his pride. So Mordecai hears of the plot and reports it to Esther. It says, if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise. If you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, and you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have been attained royalty for such a time like this? Okay, it says from chapter 5 and 10, Esther outwits a man and takes petition to the king and pleads for protection for the Jews. All right, Jewish. Okay, you got out there, the actual Jews. Okay, Negroes. All right, Benjamin, Levi. Okay, it says, and the people whom from Haman's wicked stratagem. Okay, it says the king out of anger has a man hang on gallows which he had built to destroy all the Jews. Okay, Esther's faith encourage save the people. So that was going on also at the time. Okay, so um, now that we've covered pretty much most of the historical and prophetic books, and obviously you can go into the other books. We've touched on Ezra, Nehemiah, Esther. You also got Haggai. In fact, Haggai is important. You have to go to Haggai. Okay, so Haggai, the book of Haggai. I've got it actually. I've got it here. Okay, I've got that printed out already. So, Haggai, which means feast, okay, or festive. All right, is the 10th order of the minor prophets and the first who's prophesied after the captivity. In regard to the tribe of parentage and historical tradition, alike silent. Okay, so in fact, I might want to even go to the book. So let's go to Haggai 1:1. Okay, but I want to go to I think I want to go to the second. Right. So this is the bit I wanted. Okay. So if we go on to, if we read a little bit of the history, a little bit of it. Okay, it says here, I'll read a little bit of the history behind it. It says, little is really known of his personal history, but we do know that he lived soon after the captivity, right, being the first of the prophets of the restoration. From Haggai 2 and 3 of his prophecies, it is inferred by many that he had seen the first temple, which we know was destroyed in 586 BC. If so, he must have prophesied when a comparatively old, being a comparatively old man, for we know the exact dates of the prophecies 520 BC, according to Ezra 5:1 and Ezra 6:14. He was a contemporary. He was a contemporary to Zechariah, and was associated with the works of rebuilding the temple. Besides the Greek and the Latin, Syriac VSS, his name stands with Zechariah as the head of the certain Psalms. Okay, let's carry on. Okay, he says his work. Haggai was intensely practical and important. Right, the Most High employed him to awaken the conscience and stimulate the enthusiasm of the compatriots, right, in rebuilding the temple. No prophets ever appeared in a more critical juncture in history, and it may be added, no prophet was more successful. Okay, appeared in circumstances. This is Haggai's prophecies, like Ezekiel's, are dated in the second year of Darius. Okay, Haggai 1:1. Okay, and it says the Jews, about 42,000 strong, had returned to Jerusalem 16 years before, and under the ruling. So this is the bit that's important. Okay, this is the bit I wanted to get. Okay, so Haggai's prophecies, like Ezekiel's, are dated in the second year of Darius. Haggai 1:1 and Haggai 2:10. It says the Jews, being 43,000 strong, had returned to Babylon 16 years before under the leadership of Zerubbabel, the civil head of the community. Okay, and it says Joshua, the ecclesiastical. Okay, it says the generous edict of Cyrus had made return possible. Right, compare Ezra 1 1:1 to 4. It says the new colonists had settled in Jerusalem and the neighboring towns of Bethel, okay, and Gibeon and Kiriath Jearim. Okay, so it's another adjacent. It says, eager to re-establish the public worship of the sanctuary, they set about at once to erect the altar of the burnt offerings, as it is told in Ezra 3:3 and Haggai 2:14. Plans were made for the immediate rebuilding of the temple, and the foundations were actually laid in the second month of the second year of the return. But his work was suddenly interrupted by jealous, half-caste, semi-pagan Samaritan descendants of the foreign colonists introduced into Samaria. All right, compare 2 Kings 17th chapter, the 24th verse, whose offer to cooperate had been refused. This is Ezra's 4:1. Right, for 16 years thereafter, nothing was done towards rearing the superstructure. Okay, and it says, indeed, the Jews became indifferent and began to build them for themselves sealed houses, as we're gonna read over here. Okay, so they done lost the enthusiasm. As we're seeing, some individuals now are losing the enthusiasm and they're building their own houses. Okay, instead of, they're seeing this thing. Okay, the Mosai had it to where, we prophesied the thing was gonna go down in 2000 and 2000, and where has it been? It's been 16 years. That's that's just a coincidence. That by the way, I'm not trying to say anything about that, but it's been 16 years. Dudes are getting disenchanted and all of that. You had some people fall out and go back into the world and start building their own lives and so on and so forth. We gotta get back to building the temple, man. Okay, gotta get back onto building the temple. Okay, so carrying on with this, right? Carrying on with this, it says, and returned, and is still in. So it says, and preached to the Jews who remain as Jews, and never having been carried away to Nebuchadnezzar into captivity. Okay, but in this theory is opposed. So pretty much that's all I wanted from this. So we're gonna read that within the book of Haggai, the 2nd chapter, and then I believe that's all the different historical books and the prophecy pretty much touched on in some way, shape, or whatever. So I've got Zerubbabel to do within the book of Ezra, the 1st chapter, and then I would go through the kings of Persia. I mean, I might do, but it's not really relevant at this stage because we pretty much touched on everything. Okay, so going into the different kings of the Media Persian, you can do that in your own time, but you've seen the different relevant points that need to be made. So I might still do that. So we'll see how it goes. Okay, so Haggai, the 2nd chapter, the 1st verse, it says, in the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, came the word of the Lord to the prophet Haggai, saying, speak now to Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, right, the governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Josedek, right, the high priest, and the residue of the people, saying, who's left among you, right, that saw this house in its first glory, okay, and now see it now, right? Is it not in your eyes in comparison as nothing? Okay, it says, yet now be strong, O Zerubbabel, right, saith the Lord, right? Be strong, O Joshua, the son of Josedek, and the high priest, and be strong, O ye men of the land, saith the Lord, and the work, for I am with you, right, saith the Lord of hosts, according to the word that I have covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt. For my spirit remaineth among you, fear ye not. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and dry lands, and I will shake all the nations, and the desire of all the nations shall come, and I will fill this house with glory, saith the Lord. Right, the silver is mine, the gold is mine, saith the Lord of hosts. The glory of the latter house shall be greater than the former house, right, saith the Lord of hosts. In this place, and I'll give peace, saith the Lord. Right, and in the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came by Haggai the prophet, saying, thus saith the Lord of hosts, ask now the priests concerning the law, saying, if one bear holy flesh in the skirt of his garment, and with his skirt do touch the bread or pottage or wine or oil or meat, shall it be holy? And the priest answered, no. And then said Haggai, if one that is unclean by a dead body touch any of these, shall it be unclean? And the priest answered, it shall be unclean. Then answered Haggai and said, so is this people, and so is this nation before me, right, saith the Lord, and so is every work of their hand. They shall be that shall offer that they offer is unclean. And now I pray you consider from the day from this day upward, from before me a stone was laid upon a stone in the temple of the Lord, since those days were when one came to a heap of 20 measures, they were but 10. Then one came to the press vat, for to draw 50 vessels out of the press, they were but 20. I smote you with blasting, with mildew, with hail, all labors of your hand, yet ye turned not to me, saith the Lord. Consider now this day and upwards, from the 4th and the 20th and the 9th month, even from the day that the foundations of the Lord temple was laid. Consider it. Is the seed in the barn, yea, in the vine, and the fig tree, and the pomegranate, and the olive tree have not brought forth? Right, from this day will I bless you. It says again, the word of the Lord came unto Haggai in the 4th and 20th day of the 9th month. It says, speak unto Zerubbabel, saying, I'll shake heaven and the earth, and I'll overthrow the throne of the kingdoms, and I'll destroy the strength of the kings of the heathen, and I'll overthrow the chariots, and those that ride in them, and the horses and the riders, and every one by the sword. It says, in that day of the Lord of hosts, I'll take thee, O Zerubbabel, my servant, Minister, son of Shealtiel, saith the Lord, and I'll make thee as a signet for I have chosen thee, saith the Lord. So here's this. Okay, just bear with me. Bear with me, Salakia. Okay, so that's done. So pretty much the points I wanted to take from that was that, but there was another point. I wonder if it's in the 3rd verse, because I didn't really quite get it there. Search it out. Where is it? What was I reading from? Where did I get it from? Get the exact quote. How do you spell sealed? Right, where was I reading from? Bear with me, brothers. You know. I might have to. Let me go to my sword. Get the exact reference. Okay. So I can make a point. Forget the positioning of it. There we go. So. Alright, so. That's pretty much it. Okay, alright, okay. But pretty much you had it to where, you had, there was a period of time when the temple was, the foundations were laid, but Jakes were getting into their own, they were doing their own thing. They was building up their own houses and that, and they had forgotten to, they got disenchanted pretty much. So we'll go back onto this, brief history thing I've got here. And I'll carry on reading that. So it says, the 3 historical books, namely Ezra, Nehemiah, and Esther, and 3 minor prophets, Haggai, Zechariah, and Malachi, have their context in the reign of Medo-Persian Empire. During the period, this period, the captives of Judah were permitted to go back into Jerusalem and restore their ancient city and its temples. The key to the Babylonian Empire is the dominion over Jerusalem. The key to the empire of the Medes and the Persians is the restoration of Jerusalem. Daniel gives a whole chapter to account for his being cast into the lion's den. This is an important episode in Daniel's life, while affording many spiritual lessons of the Most High's care of his prophets, as well as foreshadowing God the Most High's protection over his people Israel as a whole. Illustrates the beneficent attitude of the Medes and the Persians to the people whom they had conquered. Their defense, says here, their deference to individual religious faith is manifested in the attitude of Darius to Daniel, and his earnest desire that Daniel might be delivered from the lion's den. Okay, Darius himself described in Daniel the 5th chapter on the 31st verse, Darius the Median is properly identified as, they call him Gabaru, or governor of Babylon, appointed by Cyrus, the supreme monarch of the empire, right, of the Medo-Persians. Okay, Cyrus II, or Cyrus the Great, reigned from 559 BC until he was killed in battle in 530 BC. Okay, Darius the Mede is mentioned a number of times in Daniel. Okay, Darius seems to have reigned under Cyrus in the governing southern portion of the kingdom known as the Fertile Crescent. The statement that Daniel prospered in the reign of Darius, in the reign of Cyrus, must therefore be interpreted as Darius under the contemporary of Cyrus. It was in the first year of Cyrus that permission was given to the children of Israel to return to reconstruct the temple. All right, 2 Chronicles the 36th chapter, Ezra's the first chapter. More than a century before this was in the scriptures, Isaiah the 44th chapter and 28th verse, and anticipated the Israelites' return. It says the generous permission and encouragement of Cyrus for Israel to restore their ancient place of worship is in line with the official policy to allow captive people freedom of religion. The temple, however, was not finally completed until Cambyses II in 522 BCE, who succeeded his father Cyrus, and is referred to in Ezra's the 4th chapter as Artaxerxes. Artaxerxes was a common name ascribed to many kings, right? Others are given this title, Artaxerxes. Ezra 7:1, known as Artaxerxes Longimanus, meaning long hand, I believe. It says who reigned in 465 to 425 BC. Ahasuerus, or Xerxes, or of Esthers, who reigned in 486 to 465, also known as Artaxerxes. All right, because it's a type. It says the appeal of Darius, the king mentioned in Ezra 6:1, is reference to Darius I, known as Darius the Great, who reigned in 522 to 586 BC. This is known, and not to be confused with Darius the Medes in the prophecies, because you also had Darius the First, Second, and Third, of which Darius the Third is going to become important in the next video of this type I do, because Darius the Third is going to be the one that comes up against what's this guy's name? Alexander the so-called Great. Okay, the creep, it says more important kings of the Medo-Persian Empire are again subject to prophecy in Daniel 11:2. It says, behold, they shall stand up 3 kings in Persia, the 4th shall be far richer than they all. Okay, etc., etc. So pretty much the generic history is written there. So I'm gonna go to the last bit of this one, which is rebuilding of Jerusalem. It says Nehemiah adds an important final chapter in Israel's reconstruction. Under Nehemiah's leadership during the reign of Artaxerxes Longimanus, the walls of Jerusalem are rebuilt with the encouragement and supplies of materials from the king, and subsequently the debris of the city was cleared out and the houses were rebuilt. Thus the repopulating the city of the Most High. The 2 important steps of rebuilding the temple and rebuilding during the reign of the Persians marks the period as the time of Israel's partial restoration in preparation for the Lord's return. Okay, the spiritual revival under Ezra and Nehemiah corresponding a corresponding spiritual restoration with which the people thoroughly needed. Okay, the prophetic writings of Haggai and Zechariah also fit into this period and are related to the prophetic encouragement of the people during the reconstruction of the temple in Ezra, the 5th chapter. So I'm gonna close this out with the book of First Ezra, the 2nd chapter, and I'll touch on a little bit of history regarding Zerubbabel. Okay, and pretty much, hopefully all the major points were hit. Anything you don't understand, look it up. Questions, you can leave questions on there. I'll do my best to answer them. If I can't answer them, I'll certainly ask somebody else who can answer them. But ultimately, most of the information is out there and available online. Okay, so First Ezra chapter 2, it says, in the first year of Cyrus, as you're seeing, we're going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You should be able to make your own. When you make your own notes, you see the line of history being seen, isn't it? Okay, so it says, in the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia, the word of the Lord came to accomplish that which he had promised by the word of Jeremy. It says, the Lord raised up the spirit of Cyrus, the king of the Persians, and he made a proclamation for all the kingdom, and also by writing, saying, thus saith the king of Persia, the Lord of Israel, the Most High, hath made me king over the whole world. All right, and commanded me to build him an house in Jerusalem, okay, and in Jewry, rather more. It says, if there will be any of you of the people, let the Lord, let the Lord, even his Lord, be with him, and let him go back up to let him go up to Jerusalem, that is in Judea, and build the house of the Lord, for he is the Lord that dwelleth in Jerusalem. It says, whosoever dwell in a place. So you get that bit. So I'll drop down a bit. Okay, so the 10th verse, he says, the king also brought out forth the holy vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had carried away from Jerusalem, and set them up in his temple for idols. Now when Cyrus, the king of the Persians, had brought them forth, he delivered them into Mithridates, his treasurer. And when they were delivered into Sanballat, the governor and by him they were delivered into Sanballat, the governor of Judea. And this was the number of them. So they go into the number of that. So I'm going to drop down again. Okay, it says, but in the time of Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, okay, so I'm going to read that. It says, and these were brought back to Sanballat together with the captivity from Babylon to Jerusalem. Okay, but in the time of Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, Belamas and Mithridates and Tabalias and Rathumas and Bel-El Telethamas and Semalias, the secretaries with the others, they were in the commission with them, dwelling in Samaria and the other places, and wrote against him. I wrote unto him against them that dwell in Jerusalem, and these were the letters. And to the king, King Artaxerxes, our Lord, thy servants, Rathumas, the story writer, Semalias, the scribe, and the rest of their council, and the judges, okay, that are in Seleucyrus or Seleucyrus and Phoenice, right? Be it now known to the Lord King of the Jews that are gone up from you to us, right? Being come into Jerusalem, that rebellious and wicked city, do build the marketplaces and repair the walls of it, and do lay the foundation of the temple. But now if the city and the walls thereof be made up again, they will not only refuse to give tribute, they also rebel against the king. Okay, as for as much as these things pertaineth to the king, that are now at hand, we will think it meet to neglect as much as such a matter. So basically, they wrote onto the king saying that, Jake is going to be rebellious, just how they had been paying taxes and so on and so forth in the past. Okay, so I'm gonna jump onto the next bit. Yeah, you can read all of that for yourself, but in the interest of time, you know, I, I'm gonna just quickly deal with this. So I'm not gonna read this. I want to give you an overview of what's happening. So pretty much, you had we did now dealing we're dealing in the reign of Darius now. Okay, and you got three individuals that basically make a petition to see what's the strongest thing in the kingdom. And one says wine, another says another says men, okay, and another man says women, okay, and ultimately wisdom of the Messiah, which was Zerubbabel, okay. And then you can read that story in your own time. So I've got the history of Zerubbabel here in writing here. So it says Zerubbabel arrives in Jerusalem from Babylon. Okay, Zerubbabel was the leader of the first group of Jews, namely 42,360, who returned from the Babylonian captivity in the first year of Cyrus, the king of Persia. He was a descendant of the king of David and the grandson of Jehoiachin, the next to last king. Okay, he says although his dates are uncertain, Zerubbabel governed Judah, right, for more than a decade, right. It was he who laid the foundation of the second temple and ultimately supervised its completion after several delays, which we just read several delays there. It says Zerubbabel became an objective of messianic hope, right, for the prophets, messianic hope for the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, who saw him as the Messiah's signet and anointed servant, before whom other kings would fall and the mountains would crumble. He later became a figure of legend as recorded in the apocryphal book of Ezra. Okay, and then when you read that, you read the same thing. Okay, so it says and Zerubbabel was born during the time of the Babylonian exile. His name is Zerubbabel, meaning one sown of Babylon. Okay, basically meaning the seed of Babylon, in other words. Okay, so let's see if there's any more relevant information here. The Jewish exiles in Babylon. So Zerubbabel's grandfather Jehoiachin, also called Jeconiah, reigned in Jerusalem for only 3 months after replacing his father Jehoiakim, okay, who died during the first Babylonian siege of Jerusalem. Still a teenager, Jehoiachin was removed from office and by the army of the king of Babylon II and taken prisoner. After 36 years, he was freed from the prison by Babylonian King Marduk. It says the Bible lists Shealtiel as the son of Jehoiachin, okay, or King Jeconiah. This is 1 Chronicles 3:17, and the father of Zerubbabel. Okay, and it says Shealtiel, right, would have been a logical candidate as the heir of the throne if the Davidic line was restored. However, although the majority of the biblical references confirm Zerubbabel as Shealtiel's son, one makes Shealtiel's nephew, so going into the genealogies and so on and so forth. Okay, so Zerubbabel in Persia. Zerubbabel before the Persian king, a legend preserved in the apocryphal book of the Esdras, the first Esdras, describes a young Zerubbabel, right, one of the wisest men in Persia, right, in the Persian Empire, right, in a story of reminiscent of Daniel, of the prophet Daniel, okay, of which I've just described that. Okay, so I'm gonna see if there's any more points here to bring out. Okay, so laying down the foundation. So it says, according to Ezra's, the third chapter to the fourth chapter, Zerubbabel together with the high priest Joshua, also called Jeshua, right, and others, erected an altar for burnt offerings in the seventh month of their return, and they offered morning and evening sacrifices, and they kept the Feast of Tabernacles. In the second month of the second year, they laid the foundation of the temple. Right, they received an offer of aid by the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin, apparently the northern Israelites of the mixed Assyrian lineage, or converts to worship the Most High. But Zerubbabel and Joshua rejected this aid on the grounds that it did not go into accordance to Cyrus's instructions. They came to Zerubbabel, to the heads of the families, and said, "Let us help him build, right? Let's help him build. We seek your father, and we have sacrificed to him, which since the time of Esarhaddon, the king of Assyria, who brought us here." It says, but Zerubbabel and the rest of the heads of the family answered, "You have no part in rebuilding the temple," because there was, the northern tribe had already gone into to the Americas at the time of the Assyrians, so those were pretty much heathens that were in that land at that time. So it says, "We alone will build it for the Lord, the God of Israel, as the king of Persia has commanded us." Okay, so it says, after this, the opposition of these enemies caused delays of 17 years, and it says, "And Zerubbabel and Joshua were then aroused to the fresh activity by the prophets Haggai and Zechariah. Work was thus resumed, right, in the second year of Darius the first, right, 520 BCE. Okay, so pretty much, hopefully that was of edification. Hopefully, all the major points were hit. With that, I must say, double honesty, Apostle GMS. I should obviously be pushing this truth in sincerity, and I will catch you on the next one. Shalom.